Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's Room to Infinity series with today's topic on Out of the Box Creative Entrepreneurship, brought to you by Enterprise Asia Center for Entrepreneurship, a joint collaborative platform between Enterprise Asia and Help University. My name is Elizabeth from Enterprise Asia. It's my pleasure to be the host for today's live session. We have a special speaker for this particular session, Dr. Andy Hickson, which I'll be introducing later on. He will be bringing to you a fun hour of educational and inspirational topic on creative entrepreneurship. Now, to those who have already logged on, we have a pop quiz for you. And the question is, are you an entrepreneur to be, or student? As you're watching this from the live stream from Facebook, pop in your answers in the comment section so we can, get to know you a little bit better. So let's take a moment to do that. Help us to know you better by telling us, are you an entrepreneur to be, or student? So let's take a couple seconds to do that. All right. Okay, in the meantime, we would very much like to ask you to like, share the webinar to your friends, and feel free to even host a watch party. Do also help us to like our Enterprise Asia Facebook page. You can do us a favor and click like now to receive updates on our future events. And in the meantime, do continue to key in your answers as Dr. Andy will be able to read your live comments. Great. So our topic today is out of the box creative entrepreneurship. And before we begin, I'd like to introduce to you what Room to Infinity is all about. This will be followed by an introduction of today's speaker, Dr. Andy Hickson, which after Dr. Andy will start his presentation. And finally, at the end of the presentation, there is Q&A session. He'll be answering questions from the audience. And this session will be recorded. You'll find a video at the Enterprise Asia and Help Facebook page. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Room to Infinity is brought to you by Enterprise Asia Center for Entrepreneurship, which is a joint collaborative platform between Enterprise Asia and Help University. Enterprise Asia is a regional non-governmental organization that works with governments, other NGOs, and different organizations to promote innovation, entrepreneurship, sustainability, and growth across Asia. Under the entrepreneurship pillar, we are very proud to have the Asia Pacific Enterprise Awards, an award recognition program recognizing entrepreneurial and organizational excellence. And this Asia Pacific Enterprise Awards 2020 now gathers all country chapters into one exclusive regional edition. And the Enterprise Asia Center for Entrepreneurship is created by Enterprise Asia and Help University to accelerate the growth of entrepreneurs in Malaysia and across Asia through evidence-based industry best practices, curation of transferable framework, and aggregation of innovative initiatives. And the Room to Infinity series is actually a series of entrepreneurial sharing sessions to educate business and concurrently empower youth on thought-provoking topics, promoting entrepreneurship in the process. And most importantly, our partner Help University, a leading institution of higher learning in Malaysia, and is the first private university in Southeast Asia to achieve 5 stars in 8 categories in the 2020 QS Stars University ratings. Great. Today we have a very special speaker, an entrepreneur from birth. He is Dr. Andy Hickson. Dr. Andy is the Dean of the Faculty of Communications and Liberal Arts at Help University Malaysia, and at the same time, he is the founder and CEO of Action Work, the theater and film in education company, and he is also the director of Action Work Worldwide Limited. He specializes in social theater and uses creative activities to deal with issues of bullying, peace, and violence with young people, with disadvantaged and vulnerable groups in the UK and abroad. So today's topic is on out-of-the-box creative entrepreneurship. Dr. Andy will be sharing with us some tips and tricks of successful creative entrepreneurship and what separates creative entrepreneurs from others. And just a reminder to our audience, at any time during the webinar, you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions. To do so, just type your questions into the Facebook comments, and as time allows, Dr. Andy will address as many questions as he can during the Q&A session at the end of his presentation. So in the meantime, for those that have just logged on and joined us, welcome aboard. So perhaps let's not prolong the waiting time. Let's hear from Dr. Andy. Enjoy the presentation.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to those of you in Malaysia. Good morning to those of you in Europe. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Andy, Dr. Andy Hickson, and I am Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Communication at Help University. Yes, in a former life, I was the CEO and Creative Arts Director of a film, theatre and education company, toured all over the world with educational programs. Currently at Help University now for 18 months. Now, the views, anything I say is not the views of Help University. This is all my own stuff. So if you've got any complaints, come to me. Don't go to Help University. And I would like to say that I'm not going to be offering you a prescriptive set of ingredients of how to think out of the box or how to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to talk to you for 30 or 40 minutes about some of my experiences, some of the things that have steered me in the direction of becoming an entrepreneur. I'm going to share a few stories with you. There's an awful lot of information out there online, on Google. Just Google out of the box, entrepreneurship, creativity. I'm not going to just regurgitate some of that stuff. It's really from a personal point of view. Okay. So my background, I've been told, and I believe I've had quite an unusual background. First of all, I come from a broken family, if you like. My parents separated when I was 6 years old, which caused its own problems, not least of which financial difficulties. So that's kind of the first strand, really, that's kind of lent towards some of my entrepreneurial aspects. Living in a one-parent family, as a lot of people know, finances can prove to be quite difficult, and it was no different for me. In fact, as a kid, as a child, I had little, if no, income, pocket money, whatever you'd like to call it. I had to find ways to generate my own. So that's what I did. I wanted stuff. I couldn't buy it because I didn't have my own money. So I did what I thought any normal 8-year-old would do, is I found a way to make some money. And my first job, my first entrepreneurial business, if you like, at 8 years old, was I decided to become a second-hand book dealer. And what I used to go and do was I would tour the streets, knocking on people's door, cold calling. And they answer the door, they would see this scruffy young 8-year-old boy, and I'd ask them if they had any old books that they didn't want, and I'd take them off their hands. And surprisingly, I suppose, it was really successful. And yeah, people went in their houses, got a few books down off their shelves, and gave them to me. It got so successful, in fact, that after a week or two, I started taking a wheelbarrow with me. So on my tours of people's houses, I would be knocking on the doors, collecting up these books. Most people would give me at least one book. I would then take them round to the local second-hand bookshop, and the manager there would take all the books, and he would either, my choice, he would give me the cash or a credit note of stuff that I could buy myself in there. So that was my first business, and it helped me buy the things that I needed at the time. What an 8-year-old does need. From then, I moved to fruits, and I used to all the sort of wild fruits, blackberries, gooseberries, wild strawberries, and so on. Whenever they were in season, I would go out collecting them, take them home, wash them, and I would package them up, usually just wrapping them in sort of kitchen roll, and set up a little stall just outside my house, and I would sell them to passers-by. Occasionally I would take them into school, sell them to teachers and students, although I couldn't do that for long because I was told off. And other times, if I had any stock left, I would go to neighbours and sell them on there. So as a child, I actually had quite a lot of success. And that kind of was my initiation into becoming an entrepreneur. In the introduction, it was said that I was an entrepreneur from birth. It was more from childhood, really, and it was on a needs must basis for me. Now, I think one of the other things that helped me in this aspect was that, and you might find this strange, that I was bullied a lot as a child. I suffered an awful lot of bullying. And the main reason that I suffered a lot of bullying was because my parents, before they separated, and then once we went to live with my mother, we moved around a lot. So I moved schools, I changed schools an awful lot. What's the problem? Some of you might be thinking, well, the trouble with going to a new school on a regular basis is that you're not settled anywhere. You're not getting any roots anywhere. So I was always the new boy in school. So I didn't have a network. I didn't have a support network. I had to fend for myself. So, there was one particular school that I got really badly bullied at on a regular basis. That's another story. But generally, when I was getting picked on at all these different schools, I didn't have a friendship network. I didn't have anybody to go to help me out. I didn't have teachers that I knew that I could trust. So what it did is it helped develop resilience. So I became quite a resilient child. So I had this entrepreneurial attitude, and I had this sort of inbuilt resilience. And at the time I was being bullied, that was the only thing that sort of prevented me from crumbling, was this sort of inner strength that I was developing, because I didn't have any other strategies to stop the bullying. I just let it happen. I took it. And there is a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well, in that case, for me, it was true. So I had to fend for myself. And that included building up my own inner strength and also making my own money. Now, although I was able to build up that strength within me, it didn't help my social skills. I was still quite but I was a very fearful child. I was scared an awful lot. And a lot of this had to do with dealing with people. I was very shy, and my social skills were very poor. I didn't know how to develop relationships, how to interact with people very well. And yeah, this created a lot of problems. So why I didn't get solutions to bullying, and why I just carried on in my one-man business, getting books and selling fruit. Now, the next big thing really that happened to me of note that I'm going to share with you is that at the age of just becoming a teenager, my mother embarked on her PhD in anthropology. This entailed her coming to Malaysia and doing some research with the orang asli here. Now, she decided, as all parents do, to bring her children with her. I think partly because she knew of the difficulties that I was suffering in the UK. You know, a total change of environment might make things better for me, which they did. But we went to live in the jungle. So from age 13 to age 15, for 2 years, we lived in the jungle with the orang asli. Now, again, that's a story all unto itself. I won't go through the whole story here because it'll take up the whole time. But essentially, living with the orang asli, I learned a new language. I could speak their language. I learned all of their crafts. I could learn how to build a house without using any nails, and a dugout canoe, and I could carve things and learn how to use a blowpipe and so on and so on. What I didn't have was any formal Western education. So I had what a lot of people have described, and what I actually believe to this day is a very broad-based skills learning education, if you like. But I didn't know anything about biology and history and the monarchy and so on. So after 2 years of living in the jungle, we had to go back to the UK. So I was age 15. It's a very, very important part of our lives. We learn an awful lot of things in our lives from the early to teenage years, which I didn't realise at the time, not until later. But I came back to school, to go back and finished a year of schooling in the UK. Probably the most difficult time of my life, and I have had some difficulties. But I was this weirdo, this abo, I was called when I went to school, that thought differently than everybody else, that acted differently than everybody else, and had all these weird experiences that people couldn't make head or tail of. And I learned very quickly to keep them quiet, because essentially, if they didn't think I was weird, they thought I was just making it all up. So I kept it to myself. What I think is important here is that in this discussion is that year of school, apart from being difficult, I left with no qualifications. Unsurprisingly to a lot of people, but yeah, I had no qualifications whatsoever. And I thought that was going to be my life when I left school at age 16. I thought, I'm not an academic. I don't have an academic mind. I'm good at skills. I'm good at making things. I love traveling and so on. And I thought pretty much that was what was going to make up my life. And for a lot of the first part of my life, that's how it was. So how does this, what's the point in me telling you all of this about my early childhood? And how does that relate to thinking outside the box? Well, it's those three things really, I think, has sort of steered me in the direction from an early age to have an inner ability, if you like, of thinking outside the box. The early entrepreneurial businesses, the inner strength that I had to build, and immersion in a totally different culture, which allowed me to see the world in a totally different way. So I knew there were many ways to see a situation, many ways to see a problem, to approach a problem, many ways, many differences in the world. Now, as I said in the beginning, it's not a prescription, what I'm talking about here. I know that what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. And I'm not trying to give you a list of things that you could do that would give you the same opportunities or get you to think creatively or as an entrepreneur as me. I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself, and hopefully you'll take some stuff from that may or may not be useful. Hopefully you're not going to be bored. So, out of the box. What is thinking out of the box? We need to remember that the box is a metaphor. The box is a construct. Okay, this morning, my wife, and bless her, she gave me a little cardboard box and she said, "Will this help you in your talk today?" And I said no, only that it made me laugh this morning. So thank you for that. So we're not literally putting ourselves in boxes and trying to find ways to get outside of them. The box, just like the box of Zoom meetings, the box of and Microsoft Teams meetings, the box that we are in this Facebook that you can see me in, they're just constructs. Okay, thinking outside the box is really thinking differently than other people. It's not being afraid to think differently or act differently than other people. Now, to think outside the box takes a lot of mental effort. It also takes a lot of physical effort. It can be quite demanding. It's quite easy, I suggest, just to follow what everybody else is saying, follow what everybody else is doing, fly under the radar, so to speak. You know, you're not going to get yourself into trouble. People aren't going to shoot you down, and you're going to live a pretty safe and secure life. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's a lot of people out there that's just how they want to live their lives. And it is how I try and create an environment for my family, for my children, my wife, and so on, is to create a safe and secure environment for them. But for an entrepreneur, we can't survive in that metaphorical safe space because we would just stagnate. We need to find ways, creative ways that allow us to see things and do things from other points of view. Okay? Now, before I go any further, it's important, if you want to be an entrepreneur, that you need to think, if you're going to be getting out of the box, thinking outside of the box, who you're thinking outside of the box for. In my case, I was thinking out of the box for myself. Great. But some people, particularly more and more nowadays, they employ creative people to think of ideas outside of the box for them. And that's fantastic. I think that's brilliant. But be careful, be wary. It does take an awful lot out of you to have this out of the box creativity. And if you have a boss that is going to continue to put your ideas down, is to smash your ideas up, is to make you look stupid in front of your colleagues and so on, I would suggest that they are the type of people that is not worth getting out of the box for. So that's really the first question you need to ask yourself: who you're getting out of the box for, and is it worth it? Because in those kind of situations, you might just want to play safe. Okay, if you're appreciated, that's fine. Now, it might be that you're thinking, oh, he wants the best of safe, he wants the best of both worlds. You know, he wants to think outside of the box and he wants not to be shot down. Well, that's not quite what I'm saying. You know, I expect to be shot down by colleagues in conversation, in dialogue, and so on. But you know, if somebody's employed you to think outside of the box for them, you also need their support, because it's hard work. So the first thing, once you've got over that hurdle, is you've got to, if you're a worrier, you've got to stop worrying. That's one of the first things. You've got to stop worrying about saying or doing the wrong thing. Okay? You've got to allow these ideas, these creative ideas that are different from all your other colleagues are saying, you've got to allow yourself to say them. You've got to allow yourself to be wrong. You've got to allow yourself to fail. Now, that leads me into the big F, the four-letter F word. Fear. Okay? Overcoming fear, challenging fear, combating fear is probably the biggest thing that entrepreneurs have to deal with. And the first time I really had to sort of face that was when I was in my late teens. Now, most of my life I've worked for myself. I've been my own boss. There's a couple of times now, for example, and once, the story I'm going to tell you, where I've been employed by a company. Now, I used to be a publican, not a Republican, a publican. I was the manager of a pub, a public house, a licensed premises that sells alcoholic beverages, a pub, in other words. And you can run a pub in the UK in many different guises. The guise that I ran the pub was as a manager, so I was employed by the brewery and had my name as the licensee over the door, and then I was essentially my own boss, because I ran the pub, but I had sort of senior managers that I never saw that would sort of give me targets and so on and so on. Now, to get my license, I had to go to court. Never been to court before. And it's kind of where I realized that one of my difficulties in life was authority figures, dealing with figures of authority. And going to court, I had the judge to deal with. So it was fairly simple. I had to stand in the dock, like a prisoner was. No, I wasn't a prisoner. And I had to read out, I had to say my name, my age, my address, I believe, and confirm that I didn't have any bad things against my name that disqualified me from running a pub. And so I said all of this, and then there was silence in court. I looked at the judge, I looked around the courthouse. My heart was beating really fast, and I was wondering what was happening. And then the judge leaned over his desk, and he said, "Can you say that all again, please? But this time louder." Well, I was shaking. So I'd obviously whispered it without realizing it the first time, because I was so nervous. I was scared. I was fearful of the situation. I sort of spluttered it out louder a second time, just wanting a hole to open up in the ground and swallow me up. But that was, the sort of a really difficult standout time. And I hated the feeling. It was horrible. I hated feeling like that. And I challenged myself to find a way to stop myself from feeling fearful in those kinds of situations. Now, I could have just gone back to the safe life. Yeah, easy to do. Just kind of swim underneath the radar, fly underneath the radar, not challenge anything, and just agree with what everybody says. But that's not how I'm made up, and I couldn't do that. I had to find some strategies. And part of my life, I still do it. I think it's something very important for an entrepreneur, and for anybody actually, is to reflect on your life, reflect on situations. And before I even really knew what the word reflection meant, it was something that I did an awful lot of. And I reflected on my fearfulness. I remember watching this old black and white film. It was called something like Count 5 and Die. It was an old British espionage film where spies go out and do whatever spies do. But for the purpose of this conversation is, if a spy got caught, to stop them from being tortured or releasing information about the British government or whatever, is they had a cyanide capsule which they would pop in their mouth, bite down on it, count 5, then they were dead. And I thought about this idea a lot. It sort of influenced me, and I sort of let it osmosify, as I call it, in the back of my mind, and recalled it actually at a later date. I was in London, which was where I was living, and I was walking down the road with a friend of mine, a girlfriend, a friend who was a girl. Not to say that I didn't want her to be my girlfriend. I liked her a lot. But I was thinking about this as we were walking down the road. How can I ask you out? I felt she was way out of my league, and I was scared. I was too scared to ask her out. I was too scared of rejection. And all these thoughts are going through my mind. We end up at a bus stop. So we're standing next to each other. My fear, my heart rate is rising. I feel that I'm going red and in the face and so on. And I thought, you can't do this, Andy. It's going to take you to an early grave. And then popped into my head, count 5 and die. And I thought, I can use this. So I invented a little thing then. I said to myself, right, you're going to kiss her. I'm going to try and kiss her. I'm going to give myself to the count of 5. And if I don't kiss her before I reach 5, the world is going to end. That's what I told myself. I knew it wasn't really going to end, but I kind of gave myself that thing that absolutely my world was going to end. So I started counting. And on 3, I leaned over and I kissed her. And to my surprise, she reciprocated. And it was all fine. And when we finished kissing, she looked at me in surprise and said, "I didn't realise you were that brave, Andy." And that developed into a very nice relationship. So it worked. I thought it was magic. I thought, amazing. And that tactic served me well over a year or two. But my philosophy on fear changed, it evolved. And one of the things I did, I didn't mention my background also as an actor, a theatre director. And the first live show, the first professional live show that I performed in just off the West End in London was a two-hander called the Zoo Story by Edward Albee. And I, rehearsing up the show, 3-week rehearsal, went into the show. First week, really scared. Every time I got on the stage, I was scared. And I thought, I'm always scared, what's the difference? But, I did the show. The first week went well. And then the first day of the second week, something happened. It was very, very different. And I went to the theatre. And I already felt that I was feeling different, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. I went into the changing rooms and I started getting into my costume. The makeup artist was putting up, doing my makeup and so on. And as I was waiting to go on stage, I suddenly realized I wasn't scared. I wasn't feeling the fear. And this sort of wave of euphoria enveloped me. And I thought, I've made it. Not only have I, become the actor that I wanted to be, I finally managed to beat the fear. I finally managed to demolish fear, and that I was now going to live a life as fearless Andy. How wrong I was. Got on stage, and almost immediately I forgot my lines. Not only that, I forgot my staging, my blocking. My cue lines with my fellow actor were all over the place. I didn't really know where I was. I was sort of in a kind of a hazy mess. I was jumping from one scene to the other. And it turned to be one of the most horrible moments of my life. Again, like my court experience, I just wanted a huge hole to open up and just swallow me. I wanted to disappear from that situation. I didn't like it at all. Got to the end of the show and I got applause. At the end wasn't a total disaster, but I felt really, really badly. And the rest of the run, there was another 2 weeks to go. Just kind of didn't go through the motions, but that just carried on as normal as the first week had. But that night stayed on my mind for a long time, and I just wondered what had happened with this fear business. And eventually, after a lot of reflection, I found that, or I realized that you can't beat fear. Fear is a part of our lives. In fact, we need fear. We need fear in our lives because it actually protects us in dangerous situations. The thing about fear is we need to find techniques, we need to find strategies that will help us evolve fear or transform fear into an energy that doesn't prevent us from doing things. It doesn't freeze us in the lights like a rabbit in the headlights of a car, but actually transform it into an energy that helps us deal with the things that we're scared of in the first place. And after I've had that thought, I spent an awful lot of time working on that and finding ways to transform fear into a productive energy. And now, today is a prime example. If I'm ever about to give a talk, give a presentation, give a performance, if I'm not feeling that fear beforehand, that's when I start to worry. Okay? Before I was talking to you today, I felt the fear. And if nothing else, it shows that I care. So, transforming fear is one of the big things that we need to do as an entrepreneur. We need to give ourselves the freedom to be able to speak our minds and not be afraid of other people telling us that our eyes are stupid or that we are failures. In fact, we want to fail. Okay, we want to fail. I'm going to give you one more story before I do a little sort of wrapping up and open it up to questions. And that is, saying no is a really important skill. Okay. In fact, I was speaking to one of my colleagues earlier. It's better to say no to something than to say yes to something and then do a bad job. Because whoever you've said yes to and you've done a bad job, they won't thank you for that. They won't thank you that you feel like you've done them a favor by saying yes, because you've delivered something that's below par. So it's better to say no in the first place. There's a lot of things about no. If somebody says no to you, then generally you've got to respect that. Okay? In my early example of when I reached over to give this girl a kiss, if she had said, "Oh no," or even flinched or moved, I would have been sensitive to that and not forced a kiss on her. It was only because there wasn't any pushing away or resistance that I carried through with it. If you've asked somebody to do something for you, particularly of a personal nature, in a relationship, for example, if a woman says no, no means no. But there are some circumstances when no doesn't always mean no. And one of the examples I'm going to give you is this. One of the big events, a big event that I was organising quite a few years ago, entailed me writing to a lot of organisations and people for sponsorship, for funding, for donations. One person I wrote to was J.K. Rowling of Harry Potter fame. And I got a letter back from her PA, politely saying no. I was a little bit not in the best of moods because she'd forgotten to put the right postage on the envelope. Excuse me. So that when I received it, I had to pay the postman additional postage. In fact, it was £1.20 or just over 5 ringgits. I had to pay to receive this letter that said, "No, we're not going to help you." And I was feeling a little bit down about that and put it to one side. But then I had this thought. Two things came to mind. One was I got a reply. That she wrote back to me. I'd written to so many people and they hadn't written back. They just ignored the letters. But I thought, that's a positive. They cared enough to make a reply to me. Okay, so that's a plus. And then I thought, well, can I use that? And I thought, I remembered the envelope business as well, and I sort of penned a letter back to her PA. I didn't write to JK this time. I wrote to the PA because I had a name and in. Okay, I wrote to the PA thanking for the letter. Sorry that JK was unable to support her project, but thanking her for the best wishes. And I just wanted to let you know that it cost me just over 5 ringgits to take your letter because you haven't put the right postage on it. Kind regards, Andy, blah, 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 blah. Posted it and thought, okay, I feel fine about that. 2 weeks later, I get a parcel. And I opened up the parcel inside with 2 hardback copies of Harry Potter, 2 different of the early ones. I thought, ooh, wow, and there was a letter in it from the PA. So sorry about the postage thing. Please accept these books as a token of apology, blah, 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 a few other things she said. I was like, wow, that's nice. My kids like Harry Potter. And I opened it up and I saw that signed by J.K. Rowling, both of them. I thought, wow, worth some money. And then I looked a little bit further, first editions. So they sent me 2 first edition J.K. Rowling signed hardbacks. I put them into auction onto eBay, and I raised just over £1,500 that went towards our event. Now I call that thinking outside of the box. I wasn't rude. I responded in a nice way without too much expectation. I used some of the things that had happened with JK, the fact that she'd written back, I saw as a positive thing rather than a negative thing. And I pointed out I was lucky, I suppose, and that she'd forgotten to put a stamp on the envelope. Out of the box thinking. Okay, so fear. You need to find a way to deal with your fears. You need to make sure that you're not afraid to get things wrong. You need to stop having a fear of failure. Right? Don't be afraid to fail. In fact, if you fail to try, that's what I would call a negative thing. Okay? When I get things wrong, and I invariably do, I look at it now as a gift. You might think that's strange, but I learn the most things in my life when I get things wrong. It allows me to think of another solution. It allows me to engage in dialogue with maybe somebody or a group of people where I can help me reflect on why I've got something totally wrong. And often getting something wrong will give you a little sense of an idea of how it could be something that becomes right or better. So those seeds of idea, those creative little seeds that you might not have thought of if you hadn't have gone through the process of getting something wrong, are going to, they're fantastic gifts. Okay, so I realized I wasn't going to talk for this long, but it's been 50 minutes. We've got 10 minutes left. I have got a few more things to say, but I want to give you a chance to ask some questions. So I'm going to pass back now to Elizabeth, I believe. Elizabeth, have you got any questions for me?
Thank you, Dr. Andy, for your inspirational sharing. Actually, we have a few questions waiting for us. So let me pop up one from your guest. So she's asking, hi, Are there any good examples of famous creative entrepreneur who does things differently?
Yes, there are many creative entrepreneurs, and I think, you know, one quick Google search will bring up names that we've all heard of. You know, Steve Jobs is one prime example. So leaders in industry, Mark Zuckerberg and all of those. Yes, there's many leaders. There's an awful lot of infamous, and I mean that in the best possible sense, you know, i.e. not famous entrepreneurs that we have never heard of. Because, I mean, entrepreneurship isn't necessarily all about the money. Some people become entrepreneurs for other reasons, not just about the money. And then we've also got people that, unlike, you know, I went through, as well as being an entrepreneur, I was also went through a theatre arts training, acting training, performance training, which helped in my social skills. It helped in my communication skills. And there's an awful lot of people out there that are still unable to communicate their ideas to other people. So they may well be fine entrepreneurs, but because they've been unable to communicate what it is that they want to communicate, you know, they've stayed within their own little bubbles, so they're not famous. But yeah, if you want to find any more, just a quick Google and you'll come up with 100 names, I'm sure.
Right. So we have another one here from Supalini. How do I go about cultivating my creatively entrepreneurial qualities?
Hello, thank you for that question. As I said right at the beginning, there is no prescription. What works for one is not necessarily going to work for another. The basic things I think you need to make sure you overcome is some of the things I've talked about already, is this sense of fear. To overcome your sense of fear. And you mentioned the word creatively. I didn't use the word creative very much, but allowing yourself to be creative is going to help. And this can include things like, you know, we've heard of things like, you know, writer's block, or I can't think what else to do, and so on. You've got to allow yourself space away from the problem or the issue or the thing that you're challenging. Allow yourself to, you know, go and vegetate somewhere, or, as I like to do, write a poem, write a story, do something that's fun, you know, there's something that's silly, play some games. Best of all, go and ask a child. Okay, and I mean that with most sincerity. I've got children ranging from 2 to 22, 32. Go and ask a child. They will probably give you the most honest answer that hasn't been filtered with lots of other stuff. So yeah, first thing to do, go and ask a child. If you can't get it from there, play with them and see if that opens up your creative mind. Good luck.
Right. Thank you so much. Okay, let's address another question here from Veronica. How do you take your creative skill to the marketplace and be seen as a serious business person?
Yes, that can be difficult, particularly when I love playing around. But yeah, you need to know when and where to show your playfulness, if you like. Now, most bosses worth their salt nowadays know that a creative person is going to maybe think and act and behave differently than some of the less creative people. But it's just finding ways to couch your creativity in other ways. So, for example, you can still be a creative person and wear a suit. You know, maybe if they see you in a more traditional, serious light, but then still be able to demonstrate your creative skills, they know that if you're required to look and behave in a serious way, you can. And yet, if you're then allowed to let yourself run a little bit free and be creative and playful, you can do that at the same time as well. And, you know, becoming split personality is or compartmentalizing things is some would say a skill. Others would say it's compromising yourself, and others would say it's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, these are decisions you need to make for yourself. Personally, for myself now, is I'm not afraid to show serious business people my playful side. You know, I don't know how many serious business people are out there, but I have my two friends here, my two puppet friends. I'm playful with them when I need to be. I'm not afraid to show that I can be playful by having them on screen. But you know, I can also be a serious person as well. And I think I may well have showed you that in the way I have delivered what I've been talking to all of you on this talk. So ultimately, you want to try and be yourself. You don't want to try and be somebody else. And as much as you can be yourself, as much as you can show creative aspects of yourself, whether you're going to be showing it in a portfolio or in a film or some other medium, and then showing yourself in your sort of more serious side. Ultimately, you know, I go back to the first thing I said at this presentation. What works for one may not work for another. You need to try what works for you. Once you've got what works for you, you've got your recipe, right? Try it with, you know, if you're going for your top contract, your top job, you know, don't go into it cold. Make sure you've tried out your strategies beforehand. So seek some friends, seek somebody that's running a business, seek one of your more serious people, and deliver some kind of presentation to them and get some feedback from them. Remember, just because you don't get it right or how you want the first time doesn't mean you're not going to be able to the next time. You need to try again. You need to allow yourself to fail in order to improve. Okay, so try it, put some effort into it, make some changes, deliver it again, rehearse it up, practice, and eventually you'll get it how you want it. I hope that helps, Veronica. Good luck, and don't forget to keep on playing.
Okay. Looks like we have come to the end of the session, but we have one last question. Okay, how about, okay, the question from Puvana. Being a creative entrepreneur takes lots of effort. So how can we continue to build businesses and keep it fresh?
Great question. Yes, absolutely right. Being a creative entrepreneur is an awful lot of effort. It can take an awful lot out of us. One thing that's in our favor, though, is most entrepreneurs are doing something they love. They've been creative. And that in itself helps to energize us. And because we are already creative entrepreneurs, we are forever reimagining not only ourselves, but maybe our businesses, our products, and so on. So we're continuing to reimagine and moving forward. I always say that the true artist is never afraid to show their tricks. And what I mean by that is that allow other people to copy you. Right? Don't be afraid of showing them, you know, your little tips and tricks and so on, because that's yesterday. And the creative entrepreneur is going to be moving on to new stuff. Okay, the true artist isn't afraid to show, because they're moving forward all the time. And I'm going to leave you with a little quote. If you don't get what you want in life, whatever that is, there's always going to be something that you are going to get. And that is experience. Experience is invaluable. So always remember, whatever failures, whatever mishaps, whenever you've got things wrong, you will gain something from it. The very least of what you'll gain is experience. I really want to thank you all for listening to me. I hope it's been useful. I'll be happy to take more questions. I believe in the chat, my email address is there. You can also go through Enterprise Asia. And Elizabeth, thank you very much for that. Thank you for the questions. And I look forward to, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'll pass back to you now.
Yeah, thank you for the very informative and inspirational presentation. So we have come to the end of the session. And we look that we have answered all the questions. So as what Dr. Andy has mentioned, if you have any more questions for him, do contact him at the email shown on the screen. So before we end the session, do you have anything else that you would like to mention? So.
All of you out there, never be afraid to have fun. And I always think it's a great idea. If you've got the space, try and create something like a creative room, where all that's in there is sort of musical stuff, playful items, games, all that kind of stuff. And whenever you feel stagnant, whenever you feel stale, go in that room, be creative, play, and never forget to ask the children. They will give you some of your best ideas. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So at the same time, I'm addressing to the audience, for those who haven't liked our Enterprise Asia Facebook page, please help us to click like now to receive future updates on our upcoming events. So on behalf of Enterprise Asia and Help University, thank you everyone for attending today's Room to Infinity Live talk on Out of the Box Creative Entrepreneurship. So thank you again, Dr. Andy, and we hope to see all of you again next time in another Room to Infinity session. So have a great week ahead. Thank you now, bye.
Bye.